modest terms, maybe, modest terms to describe herself. The beloved jumps right back in and says, yeah, a lily all right, a lily among thorns. So he's comparing her to what's around, those others out there. One commentator put it, thank you.
I'm trying to just get it less.
Oh, it was quite active.
Less noisy.
Less noisy.
One commentator put it, she is a lily indeed, but her beauty far surpasses the thorny weeds all around. So he's saying that she is preferred above all others. She's unique, she's someone special, she's perfect for him. And the Shulamite responds, like an apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down in his shade with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. So she's continuing this kind of complimentary dialogue, saying, yeah, I'm a lily, but you're like an apple tree among the trees of the woods. And she sat down in its shade. So she's no doubt feeling very sheltered in this relationship, a sense of security and peace under his care. This sort of banter between the two of them reminds me of something where, some schmoozy couple will say, well, you're cute, and the next one will say, no, you're cute, and then, no, you're cute. No, you're cute. That's the kind of thing going on here. So if you can stomach that, we'll go on. Actually, Spurgeon wrote in one of his many sermons, he gave an allegorical application to the idea of the maiden representing God's people and resting under the shade of her beloved representing Jesus. And he said, straightway, good English term here, straightway she sat down under his shadow with great delight, and its fruit was sweet unto her taste. She looked up at it. That was the first thing she did, and she perceived that it met her double want. The sun was hot, there was the shadow. She was faint, there was the fruit. Now see how Jesus meets all the wants of all who come to him? So it's a nifty allegorical approach to that verse. Something I wanted to share about the allegorical approach we find throughout this. And, we talked about last week about all the people who preached all these sermons on hundreds of sermons on just these few verses in the Song of Songs. And most, if not all, of those teachings were an allegory. They were represented Jesus in the church. Initially, probably God and Israel, but eventually, Christ in the church. And I was thinking, and I did a little looking around, but it's very doubtful that Solomon wrote the Song of Songs to be anything more than this kind of love story. That's what he wrote. He didn't write this to be an allegory thinking, okay, well, when Christ comes in 1,000 years, then, they'll be able to use this. And no, he didn't write it that way. He wrote it as what it is. It's Hebrew poetry. It's a love story. But that doesn't mean the Holy Spirit wrote it that way. And looking forward in the future generations who would start to look at these verses and see this relationship between God and Israel and Christ and the church, something that's a little bit magical. It's a little bit Holy Spirit, right? He would put the package together. So we're going to keep touching on allegorical thoughts as we go through it, but I don't want to let go of the fact that these two lovebirds are really working it. So verse 4, he brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. This is the Shulamite, of course. And she's talking to the daughters of Jerusalem. So sustain me with cakes of raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am lovesick. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. So it's another one of those dreamy sequences. Remember we talked about that last week, that even though they seem like she's speaking in the present, she's not. She's in a dream, she's imagining, and we'll keep spotting things throughout these verses that keep saying, yeah, it's got to be a dream. She's and we'll point that out when we get to it. But she's imagining that he brought her to a special place, the banqueting house, the house of wine. And banqueting house of wine, probably a secluded outdoor place where the maiden and her beloved could be together eventually, and in her dream, in her imagination, be affectionate. Allegorically, again, the banqueting house symbolizes the abundant, joyous feasting found in God's presence, marked by the banner, which represents his protective love. His banner over me was love. Craig Glickman notes this. He said, she is proclaiming that the love which the king has for her is evident to everyone. So it's like he's out there. He's not hiding anything. It's pretty obvious he's gaga over this girl. He does not say one thing to her in private and contradict that in public. He is not ashamed of his love for her, so he is glad for all to see it. That's a good lesson, I think, relationships. If you have a relationship like that, it shouldn't be a secret. And it should be public, because that secures the relationship, if you know what I mean. When relationships are sort of like, let's not talk about it, you shouldn't probably be in that relationship. This is a solid, wholesome relationship at this point. So verse 5 says, sustain me with cakes of raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am lovesick. And she describes being sustained and refreshed with sweet fruits. She's got the munchies. Induced by her feelings of the beloved. I don't know if you. I know there's other things you do to get munchies, but being in love is one of them. She's experiencing a feeling associated with romantic love, and it's a good thing. It's a sweet thing. A little weak in the knees, perhaps. And she says she's lovesick, so maybe she actually feels physically weak and a little disoriented. Watchman Nee, we talked about him last week, applied this idea to the believer's relationship with God. It said, sick with love is lovesickness and is the equivalent of being exhausted with happiness. I love that term, exhausted with happiness. I mean, that is something in love, out of love, before the Lord, exhausted with happiness. I think is something probably we've all experienced to some degree at some point in our life. And it's a delight, and I'd like to be exhausted with happiness most of the time. It's such a good thing. Such was the experience of the saints of all ages when they came into a full realization of the Lord's special presence. Amen. Some would say that's when I got saved. I had that exhausted with happiness feeling. Verse 6, his left hand is under my head, his right hand embraces me. So I see a picture here of like a paperback romantic novel from the 50s or something where, it's probably Elizabethan or something. But there's a couple in that pose, right? I tried to find one, just so I would name a name. I was thinking of Jane Austen or Zane Grey. I don't know if you remember who Zane Grey was. He wrote all those paperback cowboy novels in the early 20th century, and he was a local guy. But anyway, that's the picture I get. So things are getting more interesting, but you got to remember, this is a daydream. It's their imagination. This isn't happening in real time, and it will materialize later. She's imagining what it will be like, I think, what it will be like when they're finally married and together in that way. But it leads her to say in verse 7, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. In other words, don't start something you can't finish, right? Or that you shouldn't finish anyway. At least not until the marriage is final. We'll hear this exhortation several more times in this book. This is the first time I think we run into that. But it's that important. It is that important. These verses describe a daydream of hers, and really should never be considered like this is what's happening in the moment. And to kind of demonstrate that it's kind of a dream, the daughters of Jerusalem are right there. This is all going on, and here again, I'm telling the daughters of Jerusalem is like, that would be typical of a dream, right? If you've had dreams and you're out wandering or doing whatever, and suddenly there's people that you don't expect in that dream, that's kind of what happened here. But so she turns to them and says, "Don't do it. Don't waken love until it pleases." Then verse 8, again the Shulamite says, "The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes, leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Behold, he stands behind our wall. He is looking through the windows, gazing through the lattice. My beloved spoke and said to me, Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grapes give a good smell. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. O my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the secret places of the cliff, let me see your face, let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely." What a smooth talker. That's got to be beautiful, especially in the original language of Hebrew. But he's trying to woo her. She's imagining a visit from the beloved, and she kind of imagined him coming, skipping on a mountain like a gazelle or a young stag. He's full of energy. He's excited. But now he's looking through the window. He's gazing through the lattice. That's kind of, yes, thank you. Creepy. But he's calling her away. He's saying, "Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away." He describes spring to her, saying, "The rain is over and gone. The flowers are blooming. The birds are singing." You get the picture. It's springtime. Woohoo! He's anxious to get that girl out into the spring air, that he can hear her sweet voice, as he says, and see her lovely face. And these verses can be allegorically viewed as the loving invitation of God, calling the believer out of isolation, spiritual complacency, into a deeper, active relationship. That's a nice way to look at it. So verse 15, here's a weird one. So we go from all that beautiful poetry, well, this is too is poetry. Verse 15, "Catch us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes." So if you've got a Bible that tells you who it is, these are her stepbrothers. We mentioned last week in chapter 1 that she mentions my mother's sons. So apparently half brothers, not real brothers, but anyway, they were kind of mean to her. They made her take care of their vineyards. Now it seems they're telling her to catch those pesky foxes, because the grapes were tender and the foxes could spoil the yard. So this verse is actually a pretty famous metaphor. It's not an unknown metaphor. It's pretty common and pretty famous for guarding your spiritual life, which makes all the sense in the world if you really put it in that context or read it. The little foxes represent small, seemingly insignificant habits or compromises or distractions. Who doesn't have distractions in their life? And if left unchecked, they can slowly erode the fruitfulness of a believer's walk with God. I think of those habits. There's the good habits and the bad habits, right? There's the habits that are like praying every morning, every night, at a certain time, with others, whatever. Not compromising in our walk through this life, and compromising in what we display to the world as we live, and of course distractions. But I think of prayer being one that probably mentioned a little later too. But this somehow reminded me of Martin Luther's comment, which is kind of famous, and I'll misquote it right now. He said he had a lot to do that day, so I'll have to pray an extra hour. Got so much to do, I don't know how I'm going to get it done, so I'll just pray an extra hour. He actually may have said 3 hours, but the idea is, if you've got a lot to do, you got to prep for it, right? You got to be ready for it, praying is one way to do it. So that's one thing that came to mind as I read about the little foxes. But something to be aware of in our lives, right? Things that are kind of eat away at the grapes, and we don't realize it until all the vineyard's empty. There are no grapes. We get distracted. We make compromises, and always need to be aware of that. So verse 16, the maiden's thinking about her beloved here, and she says, "My beloved is mine, and I am his. He feeds his flock among the lilies." Then she says to her beloved, "Until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag upon the mountains of Bether." Probably haven't heard of the mountains of Bether before, but we should actually note here, first of all, if anybody has things to share, please do stand up and contribute if you'd like. And another thing, we have Bibles back there. There's about 3 new King James versions back there. If you want to read along through these verses, if you don't have a Bible, because it's always good, right around the corner, right around the corner. There's also a King James version that somebody apparently left behind. I would not start with that one for this book, but yeah, it's in. Oh, that's the King James. That's fine. Anyway, the other thing I should note, we just read verses 16 and 17. Charles Spurgeon preached 8 sermons on these 2 verses alone. So he dug a little deeper than we're going to dig tonight, for sure. But verse 16, she says, "My beloved is mine and I am his." So we get the sense that she's pretty secure in this relationship. She's confident in the bond she enjoys with him, and she likes where they're at in this relationship. You ever been asked about a relationship? You said, "Well, where are you?" "I like where we're at." I don't know what that means for other people. I've been in one for quite a while, and I like where it's at, and I've always liked where it's at. But it's an interesting observation that she's feeling very secure right now. Not that he's going to run off. This is Solomon, so keep in mind. He had other opportunities. So, yeah. So verse 17 says, "Turn, my beloved." She's talking to him. "Be like a gazelle and a young stag." So, again, full of energy, full of virility, like a young gazelle or stag jumping on the mountains. But it says, it refers to him upon the mountains of Bether, which literally means mountains of separation. So there's some deeper meaning to that, even in these verses, without Charles Spurgeon chiming in, but he will right now. He said allegorically that the Shulamites speaks of mountains dividing her from her beloved. And she means that the difficulties were great. They were not little hills, but mountains. We don't really know what those mountains were. They closed up her way, and it's plain from this sacred canticle, which is, again, is Latin for song, canticle, that the spouse may love and be loved, may be confident in her Lord, be fully assured of her possession of him. That's all good. Did you hear that? The spouse may love and be loved, may be confident in her Lord, and be fully assured of her possession of him. And yet, there may, for the present, be mountains between her and him. So an interesting consideration. I don't know. I just, you have to ask, do I have mountains, some challenges between me and the Lord? That's where I would go, not me and my wife or my beloved. But yeah, with the Lord, are there things separating us? Is there a mountain in Bether in the way? Don't know. It's one of those things to consider. So we are way ahead of schedule tonight, but we are screaming into chapter 3 now. This is the chapter where it's the royal wedding. The chapter we just covered was sort of their engagement, and now the royal wedding, which is kind of at the end of the chapter.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am. I was
Um,
waiting.
So the chapter that we're just about to leave, if I remember correctly, you said something about we'll see later that she's daydreaming. And maybe we haven't gotten there yet. Can you explain? So what I think I heard you say is that the verses that we've already read in chapter 2
Yeah.
is she's daydreaming, and we'll find that out later. And I'm wondering how we know that.
Do I know it? Know it? There's a
Like what inclines that perspective?
There's a consensus out there that those were daydreams, and the fact that the daughters of Jerusalem are right there every time she's daydreaming it and finding herself in this very intimate place with her beloved would suggest that they're not there. I mean, it's a daydream. It's an imagination, maybe. I don't know. But that's kind of the justification for thinking, yeah, this is la la. If you're in love, there must be some imagination in all that, right? There is some daydreaming, I would guess, and possibly even in your actual dreams. But dreams are funny. Dreams are funny. I mean, it talks about these people showing up here. I mean, I have them. We all have them. Surprisingly, 95% of dreams I've read cannot be remembered. So you could be dreaming all night, and you wake up. If you don't wake up in the middle of one of those dreams, then you might remember it. But if you're like you've had this dream, and now it's time to wake up, 5% chance you're going to remember what it was you were dreaming about. Even the pleasant ones, which is surprising. So, yeah, that's kind of the justification for it, is that she's in a place that, and we're going to see one right now, another one. Let's read about it. It's chapter 3, verse 1. By night on my bed I sought the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. I will rise now, I said, and go about the city and the streets and the squares. I will seek the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. The watchmen who go about the city found me. I said, have you seen the one I love? So again, probably another dream or daydream. And it seems that she's imagining waking up in the middle of the night, feeling alone, can't find her beloved. She couldn't find him in the house, so she got out of bed and went out into the streets and squares to look for him. Really? We're going to read in chapter 4. Yes, chapter 4, when we get there, how she was in a similar situation but wouldn't get out of bed because she'd open and her beloved was outside. She wouldn't get up to open the door. So the fact this is, again, a dream is she's like, oh, I got to get out there barefoot, whatever I'm wearing, I don't know. Dreams, sometimes you look around and wonder if you're even wearing clothes in your dream, and it's like, I guess it's okay, nobody said anything. But that's what dreams are all about. She couldn't find him, so she went out into the streets and squares. Still, she couldn't find him, so she asked the watchman to go about the city, have you seen the one I love? So allegorically, we're going to look at it this way. This kind of captures the dark night of the soul, or a season of spiritual dryness. The believer feels disconnected from God's presence, maybe. That can happen. That can be those dark periods that people sense in their soul. The soul's active and determined search in the streets illustrates the pursuit of God, even when he feels absent. So, kind of a hopeful pursuit, I guess, but feeling like God is absent in your life right now. And it's a funny thing about sleep and dreams, but sleep in general, things always seem larger and more urgent in the middle of the night. Have you noticed that? If you got things bugging you, and it's happened to me recently about a number of things, and it's happened to me severely in the past when I was had a job and worked. But yeah, the middle of the night, things are gigantic. They're just like big. Everything is big. How are we going to solve this? It's like, and you pray for sleep. You just want to get to sleep, but you can't because it's so big and it's so urgent. Anyway, takes us to verse 4. It says, "Scarcely had I passed by them, the watchmen, when I found the one I love. I held him, and I would not let him go, until I had brought him to the house of my mother, and into the chamber of her who conceived me." So apparently the watchmen were of no help, couldn't help her. But after passing them, it wasn't long before she ran into her beloved. "I found the one I love." This is the 4th time she repeats this phrase, "the one I love," in these first 4 verses. She repeatedly confirms her feelings for and commitment to her beloved. And I would just say that's really healthy. That's healthy to affirm that and affirm your commitment verbally and by actions. So I would say don't keep them guessing, right? It's your family or your kids, your wife, your spouse. Don't keep them guessing. Allegorically, this is joy of reconnection when she's clinging to her beloved, saying, "I have found the one I love." Yes, ma'am. Are you
Okay.
following up on that verse?
Yeah, well, this 1 through 5, is this the part that she's dreaming because she's saying, "On my bed night after night I sought him," so she's dreaming about him whom my soul loves? "I sought him but didn't find him." She wants to get up and go find him, and she's doing it in her dreams because then in verse 5, the husband, my Bible says, "The husband to the daughters of Jerusalem, O daughters of Jerusalem, don't arouse or awaken my love until she pleases." It sounds like that's the end of the dream sequence. Is that right?
It could be, but it's
'Cause-
also part of the, they're
I mean,
there.
is she
Somehow
really
they're-
running around
somehow
town?
in the middle of the night, she's running around the streets of Jerusalem, and here's the daughters of Jerusalem. And here they are, right here. Where do they come from? Why are they out there? They're not supposed to be there.
Yeah, and are they, or is this a dream sequence?
It's a
very
dream. It's a
confusing. Because then after that, it kind of doesn't, then it seems like it goes more into reality when you get into verse 6.
Yeah, they could be in and out of reality in this.
So it's really,
This is a unique book. I think we're all finding joy in following the path here, but I hope we're not uncomfortable speaking of the one we love. But anyway, this is the joy of reconnection, right? Spiritually, this represents the soul clinging tightly to the presence and grace of Christ, refusing to let go of the intimacy that has been restored after a period of wandering or searching, after that dark night or dry season. And I think of this holding on to Jesus and the one I love is really prayer. I think it must be prayer. It must be clinging to God in prayer, and He's the one I love. He's the one we love. Right? So allegorically, it makes sense, and because prayer is intimate. It should be. If there's prayer going on, it should be intimate between you and Christ, and between you and the Lord, and quality time shared with Him, right? So continuing that verse, he says, "Until I had brought him to the house of my mother and into the chamber of her who conceived me." This is still in her imagination, her dream. She dreamed of bringing her beloved home with her, to always be together with him, and to enjoy the intimacy of the chamber of her mother's home. G. Lloyd Carr wrote this, and it's... well, listen to it. He says, yes, consummation she wants. She's quite anxious to consummate her marriage when she gets married, but even in her dream, she wants the consummation to be right. So, hence, that leads us to verse 5. "I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem," who just happened to be standing here in my dream, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. So again, until it's the right time, not until it can be consummated within the bond of marriage. And just another reminder that this section has to be considered a dream or a daydream, since she is again talking to her companions, as we just pointed out earlier. So we'll stick with that for now. So here comes the wedding finally. We're finally here. We have 15 minutes. Shouldn't take long. So who is this? Verse 6. Who is this coming out of the wilderness like pillars of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the merchants' fragrant powders? Behold, it is Solomon's couch, with 60 valiant men around it, of the valiant of Israel. They all hold swords, being expert in war. Every man has his sword on his thigh because of fear in the night. It's an interesting verse. So finally, it's their wedding day. And the verse asks, who? Who is coming out of the wilderness? And we wouldn't really know. We suppose it must be Solomon coming out of the wilderness. I don't know what he was doing in the wilderness, but coming out of the wilderness. But thanks to the heavily gendered Hebrew language, we know it's not a masculine figure, it's a feminine figure. So it's a girl coming out of the forest. It's the Shulamite arriving in Solomon's palanquin for the wedding, which is described at the end of this chapter. So palanquin, that's the word used in these verses here. Do we know what that is? We've probably seen them if you've watched kind of Cecil B. DeMille movies, or Cleopatra, or any of those where the queen or the king or both are carried on in a seat, a couch, a seat or a couch. Usually it's got a cover over it, may even be enclosed somewhat, but guys with poles, carrying the thing with poles, no shirts on. I don't know why they never have shirts on, but they don't, because they look really good. So that's for the ladies out there, I guess. But yeah, so that's a palanquin, and it's described a little in the next few verses, but it says like pillars of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense. So what's this all about? Pillars of smoke, pillars of smoke. So in ancient royal processions, smoke primarily symbolized divine presence, immense wealth, and triumphant arrival, which added to the dignity and impressive character of Solomon's entourage. And he gave that to the maiden to bring her to the wedding. I mean, he is coming out of the woods, out of the wilderness. It's not where Solomon lives, that's where she lived. So when I think of smoke, I think of rock bands and smoke machines, right? I think of some churches who use smoke for their worship. Don't ever do that, whoever you are. But you've seen these videos of rock bands and all the smoke, they're just these little skinny guys on the stage, but the smoke makes them seem much bigger, more grander. It's more impressive, like kind of like this. What did he say? Divine presence. That's what a rock star wants to be. Divine presence and immense wealth, probably. They may. Anyway, so smoke was a big deal back in the day as well. So processions such as this usually also burn costly spices, and they mention myrrh and frankincense, and in mass quantities to announce a monarch's high status and purify the path. So we got a lot of smoke, and we got a very sweet aroma. This is smelling good. So this whole entourage is just looking good. And she further describes it as complete with 60 valiant men of Israel. So there's 60 tough guys surrounding this palanquin as it approaches. Because of fear in the night, there was security in becoming one with her beloved, especially the king. As Watchman Nee expressed it, she and Solomon were so identified with each other at the state that there was a perfect oneness between them. What was his was hers. What he enjoyed, she enjoyed. And he ends that quote with, "This is union." I think it's a sweet way to frame it for sure. And then verse 9, she's starting to describe what that palanquin looked like. We heard a little bit about it in the previous verses. Verse 9 says, of the wood of Lebanon, Solomon the king made himself a palanquin. Verse 10, he made its pillars of silver, its support of gold, its seat of purple, its interior paved with the love of the daughters of Jerusalem. Verse 11, go forth, O daughters of Zion, and see King Solomon with the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, the day of the gladness of his heart. So verse 10, she describes the luxurious palanquin, obviously made of the finest materials, pillars of silver, supports of gold, seats of purple, which was rare, and interior paved with love. That's a kind of an interesting way to put, I guess, we're talking about the care that went into finishing the interior of this palanquin. Somebody noted, perhaps symbolizing that true devotion and affection are at the heart of this marriage. In other words, he was speaking to the quality of the environment they were in and the palanquin that carried her, and that true devotion and affection was at the heart of this marriage. So verse 11 says, go forth, O daughters of Zion, and see King Solomon with the crown with which his mother crowned him. So here he speaks of the daughters of Zion. This is not the daughters of Jerusalem that we've been hearing about and finding in dreams. It's the daughters of Zion, which represent the people of Jerusalem, the covenant community. And the verse calls them to leave their routines. You know, like, hey, drop everything, drop what you're doing, and come and see King Solomon, Israel's wise and glorious king. So he was an admired king, adorned with the crown that his mother Bathsheba placed upon him on his wedding day. The special crown. It was not the royal crown. It wasn't the crown they put on his head to be king of Israel, but likely more of a floral wreath. You've seen these at weddings and so on. So floral, herbs, branches, some say some stones, jewels, but it was symbolic of honor and joy and gladness. It was a joyful occasion. This relates strongly, there's a rabbinic tradition that a bride and bridegroom were considered to be a royal couple on the day of their wedding. So this would be the crowning of the groom. Maybe the bride, I don't know if she got a crown. But anyway, the rabbinic tradition is to treat the couples being married as a royal couple. So maybe that's the beginning of it. Verse 11 continues, on the day of his wedding, the day of the gladness of his heart. So one commentator noted that it was not only the day of gladness for the king, it's a good day for him and his bride, but also for those who shared in his happiness, the whole community. This was a positive, wonderful event to be occurring, that they're marrying, this love affair is being sealed in a marital bond. Their love had become a fountain from which all could taste the sweetness of their joy. So that's a great expression. It became a fountain, kind of like you're going to get wet. If you're around these two people, you're going to get wet and you're going to feel good about it. You're going to have joy. A great example. And then verse 11 is, of course, widely viewed through a spiritual lens as well. It's hard to miss for that. It's a prophetic picture of Christ and his bride, the church, in that analogy. The king, of course, represents Jesus, the ultimate king of peace. The crown symbolizes the glory, honor, and ultimate triumph given to Christ. The wedding day, what we know what that means, points forward to the final joyful union of Christ and his people, the church, at the end of the age. And the daughters of Zion, these are the important people for sure. It's an invitation to all of us, believers and onlookers, to behold, admire, and rejoice in the glory of the Savior. That's a perfect picture for Christ and his church and the bride. Spiritually, it mirrors the future final wedding feast of the Lamb, when Christ and the church are completely and eternally united. So, we have time for more comments.
Okay.
You got 10 minutes. Go ahead. Knock yourself out.
I'm just trying to get this in my head. Okay, so she's dreaming, right? Because it was definitely probably a dream, because no bride-to-be is going to bring her groom into her mother's bedroom, right? So that must have been a
Yeah.
dream.
Something like that.
And then after she wakes up, it kind of looks like a picture of the rapture to me, because if he is sending for her, he's bringing her to him, right? And his,
You mean like in verse 6?
yeah, when she gets, verse 6.
Yeah.
So this is coming up,
Yeah.
So he's bringing her to him. And I think that's what Jewish grooms did. They would show up, and the bride always had to be prepared, because she never
Right.
knew when he was going to come get her.
Right.
So he's bringing her in his traveling couch
Yeah.
to the wedding, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where the
Well, the wedding's
daughters are
coming to
waiting.
him, right? The procession is coming.
Yeah, the
to
procession.
him.
So she's bringing her, in
Yeah.
the procession for the joining, for the wedding
Yeah.
feast. That's kind of what I'm seeing there. I never realized. I thought Solomon was kicking back in the couch, coming to get her, and it turns
Yeah,
out
that's what
that-
it would seem. Everybody
Yeah.
says that too. Well, it seems like it'd be Solomon. It's his
Yeah,
couch,
that's
right?
actually really interesting that you pointed out that the gender is female
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
getting in the couch.
Thank
So
goodness for Hebrew poetry and.
that's when I
Hebrew
suddenly
gen-
realized, this kind of looks like a picture of the rapture. It's only because the bridegroom is coming for the
Yeah.
bride when he's coming for his church.
They weren't confused about gender back in the day, so. Not the Hebrews. So, no, that's good. And we haven't touched on all the allegories out there. I mean, all these people didn't preach all these sermons where something like the rapture didn't come up. That would maybe a whole sermon by Spurgeon. Who knows? Yeah, we should research that. Yes, ma'am.
I guess this is like a side thought curiosity. I'm aware it shows up sometimes in movies of a Jewish wedding, and I've seen it in Orthodox ones, but I don't know that it's exclusive to that. And I think there's other people that pick it up sometimes too. But so I guess in what we would call the reception, so the Orthodox wedding picture in my mind, so they would have this curtain down the reception hall that's dividing the men from the women.
Yeah.
So then the ladies that are rejoicing with the bride would raise her up on a chair, and the men rejoicing with the groom
Yeah.
would raise him up on a chair, and then there's some kind of cord that they both hang on to that like bridges this curtain. It just makes me wonder, like, where did this tradition come from? And it makes me curious if this Song of Songs Palanquin litter might be the where it came from.
Yeah.
I don't know.
As far as that tradition,
Yeah.
yeah, that tradition may have come along long after King Solomon.
I'm just
This is
musing
2,000 years ago.
curiously.
Think
Yeah.
about it.
I don't know how old that tradition is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that Jewish traditions that have evolved over many, many millennia, centuries anyway. And that the wedding, obviously, yeah, it's like we talked about the wedding being the royal couple. So I think
Right,
that's why
yeah.
they were hoisted up in their chairs,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
the palanquins, right? That's a good
Yeah,
thing.
and where did the rabbis get that? I mean,
Yeah,
it just
I
makes
like
me
that.
wonder if this
I
might
like
be
that.
that
They were good at making
influencing
things
that
up.
perspective.
I
They were
like
experts
that.
at
Thank
making
you.
things up. That was one of their specialties. One of the things that
I'm going to pull that mic down just so you can, yeah, there you go.
One of the things that struck me is that it talked about King Solomon's men with their swords. They were actually the bearers of the couch that he was on
Yeah.
as he went to his wife. And what they're describing, when she's describing the purple couch, that was something that he came in and went and got her, and then she was put on that couch and he walked at that point. And it was, I remember reading about it in a history book
That's interesting,
about it.
yeah.
But one of the things is that purple is considered a royalty
Yeah.
and has always
Yeah.
been royalty as far back. In fact,
the purple
the
sea.
curtains that were used
Yeah.
for the ark,
Yeah.
some of them were done with the purple. So royalty has always been a primary color. But the men, the reason why they were with swords, he's a king, for heaven's sake. They have to not only take care of him, but protect him.
Right.
So that's what the swords are on the side. They're not going to be carrying things that go, la, 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 la. They're going to be carrying and being aware of who's around them to protect them. Once he gets to the bride, she climbs on there, and then depending on what you read, he either is with her on there, but usually what he did is he came off and walked in front, walked with it. And the smoke that you're talking about, that was considered a blessing. They were carried, and that actually came out of the Greek and then out of Egypt as well. Both of them had that. Then Egypt did it for prayer type things. But the Greeks, I can't remember the exact way it was, but they did it for smoke, for as a celebration kind of thing, and honoring whoever was going to be in that, going to be in that carriage. So,
Cool. That's great. Thank you, Brandy. That's very important. Informative. Jason?
So I'm reading this book called The Disciplines of a Godly Man with my mentor. And this conversation's come up quite a bit. Is trusting our love life in God's hands, which has been like a topic for me recently just because of the season of life I'm in. And he keeps telling me to wait and be patient and to trust the Lord with my love life, which I found kind of difficult to do at first.
Yeah.
And it's not my first time reading the Songs of Solomon, but verse 14, like chapter 2, really stood out to me. O my dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the secret places of the cliff, let me see your face, let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely.
Yeah.
So for me, when I heard you read that, I was thinking how we go to the Lord, we want to feel his presence in prayer, and we want to have a relationship with our Father. And it made me think how when I'm being told what marriage is like for Christians, Christ loved the church, and I'm supposed to love my wife like the church.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking the Spirit is a presence. It's something you feel. When you're with the Lord. You also know when you trust him that he also gives you a peace and a sense of truth and confidence about things in your life. And one thing I've never even thought about was giving and surrendering that to him as the timing for my love life.
Yeah.
This is like my third time reading the Song of Solomon, and I realized, I didn't realize it at first, but it says until it pleases 3 or 4 times, and I'm just well, why do you think that is? That in her mind, she's imagining these things about her lover until it pleases, until it's timing, because it's a big thing in chapter 2, verse 14, where the lover speaks to her, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. And then mentions the fig tree, the timing, the seasons. And I was just dang, that's so true. You'll know when it's your time to find love and to find her. Because that's my biggest thing my mentor puts on me. He's you'll know when you're ready to find your wife, and you'll be ready to go out and find her. And the season will be appropriate for the task. And it just makes me I never noticed the imagery, the mention of the fig tree, the dove, the rock, the cliff, the secret place. All those things kind of have the same symbolic representation of how we spend time with the Lord.
Yeah.
And if I'm to love my wife like the church, it's a place of presence, something that's felt.
Yeah.
I know when I'm in her presence that I'm meant to be there because of what guided that timing and that relationship.
Yeah.
So, like, I've just never noticed that before because I guess I wasn't paying attention as well as I thought I was. But,
That's really good.
but
That's really
maybe I might have been fighting it. But yeah, I just thought that was cool. You know how we mentioned it, and then like the wedding night comes up and he rolls up in his chariots. You know, I just thought that was cool. That's all.
It is cool. It is cool. You know, it's just the idea that the allegories related to the Song of Songs or the Song of Solomon is that, you know, God, God's word is so deep that we can't dig deep enough to get to the bottom of it. And it's true throughout the scriptures, through all 66 books in the Bible. But it includes this one too. This one has those deeper meanings, those deeper thoughts, and those allegorical thoughts that relate to Christ and the church. And we need to celebrate those, even though they're not in the text. But
I'm wondering, when she's talking about the nightmare that she's had, well, to me it seems like a nightmare that she had when she, you know, couldn't find her love and
Yeah.
was trying to go to the city. First of all, she would have never gone out to the city because that would have been against Crystal there. That's a good way of ending a
well,
marriage.
that's the good thing. She's out there.
But I'm thinking that she loved him so much that at some point,
Yeah.
she suddenly feared that she was going to lose him. And
Yeah.
that loss,
Yeah.
that sense of loss would have been manifested in this kind of a dream where
Right.
he's gone and she can't find him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't there in the first place. In her dream, she wakes up and he should be there, but he wasn't supposed to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. Well, listen, we got married tonight. Next week, chapters 4 and 5, we're going on a honeymoon. And then, and that's going to be a delicate tiptoe through the tulips. And, oh, it gets even worse. And then chapter 5, they have a falling out. So we get to experience their little tizzy, whatever it's called, I don't know. Father, thank you for this night. Thank you for the blessing of your word. And God, we pray that you would help us always to be sensitive to your word and to be in your presence, Lord, when we open this Bible, when we seek to find your will in the Bible, Lord, just help us to open our hearts and minds to you every time. And we thank you that you're always there. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right.